Good afternoon, everyone. This is Josh of Facet Games, aka Metaxas on the forums, coming to you with a little bit of an update as to where things stand right now and what you can expect over the course of the next couple of weeks. I'm doing this quick off-the-cuff video blog thing rather than writing something up only because it will get done if I try and write it. I'm a bit of a perfectionist, and that can get a little bit messy. Coming to you here from my office here in my home up in Bangor, Maine, and those of you with sharp eyes may be able to pick out some of the books on the shelves behind me. Anyway, yesterday, which was Thursday the 22nd of January, I got the latest build for the Earthdawn 4th Edition Player's Guide, which factors in a lot of the feedback and error catching and so forth from the lovely people who downloaded the Kickstarter pre-release version and provided us with feedback. It also incorporated all of the art that has come in since then, which was released sort of back on January 1st. And as of right now, we've got a little bit more than a dozen pieces of art missing, all of which are assigned and we're expecting to come in over the course of the next few days. So, fingers crossed, we'll have the final pieces of art in over this upcoming weekend, first part of next week. Fitting in any kind of last-minute bugs, and the official electronic version of the book should be available, I'm going to say by the end of the month, maybe sooner. I mean, as soon as we've got the art in and feel like we've squashed all of the bugs and typos, we're going to put it on there and put it up for sale so that all of those who missed the Kickstarter will be able to get an electronic copy of their very own. And also, when that goes up, we'll start sending out the coupon redemption codes for the backers who are getting that. The plan, once the electronic release is out, is to give it maybe another week for any additional typo and bug squashing to come in, and then we'll send the files off to get the print version, which hopefully will have the print version showing up in the distribution chain and available in February. So that's where things stand there, and that's looking pretty good. The Game Master's Guide is admittedly way behind schedule. A big part of that has to do with what's been going on in my life the last 3 to 4 months. People who've been kind of keeping up on things have an idea of the situation there. I'm not going to get into that here. It has a little bit to do with the production delays on the Player's Guide, but some other stuff as well. The plan was originally to have both books kind of coming out together. That's not going to happen given the lateness of the Player's Guide. We want to get the books out. I'm doing a final polish pass-through of the rule sections. Morgan, aka Panda, from the forums, is working on the Magic Items chapter, not only kind of factoring in the revisions to the Magic Items themselves, but also kind of going over the rules and advice at the beginning of that chapter. Not changing the way Magic Items work per se, but factoring in, trying to bring in some more advice and suggestions on how Game Masters can use Magic Items to help drive stories, story arcs, or even entire campaigns. Because the way that Magic Items work in Earthdawn does lend something fairly unique, interesting to that possibility. So that is something that hopefully will have the text kind of locked down and have pre-release info on that going out here probably in February, I'm going to say. Don't know the exact date. Obviously, everything that I'm saying here is subject to change. So that's where things stand there. Two other things that I want to address real quickly before I wrap up here for the day. The first of them is Gen Con. Registration, I think, has just opened or will be very soon opening for Gen Con for 2015. Facet Games collectively will be there as of this recording. I don't know if I am going to be able to make it or not. I would really like to. Uh, and if I am there, I will be running some games as well as obviously being at the FASA Games booth, and I would love to meet people and say hi and that sort of thing. I will probably have a decision about Gen Con that is going to be made here in the course of the next few days, and we'll sort of talk about that when it becomes available. But other FASA Games folks will be there, and not just Earthdawn, but our other games are going to be represented. So if you're going to be at Gen Con, come by and say hi, play games. It'll be awesome. The other con-related issue, and the second thing that I wanted to bring up, and how that relates to Earthdawn in general, is this past weekend up here in Bangor was SnowCon, which is our local gaming convention. It had its 7th year and moved into a new venue this year that was really nice. I ran a couple of sessions of Earthdawn, one on Saturday and one on Sunday, and they were both really well received. Saturday we had a full table, and was actually happy to meet fellow Ethereal from the Earthdawn boards. Actually came up from Massachusetts and played in the game. So it was cool to meet people in person. I always like that. Being kind of isolated up here, I don't get to meet the fans in person quite as much as I would like. So that we had a full table there. That game went well. And then Sunday I had another session which had most of the local crew that I typically run Earthdawn for at conventions. That was 4 players instead of the full 6, but that also went well. So I'm pleased with that. One of the things that came up in the course of the game, especially on Saturday, the first of the games that was run, is something that I think is probably what would be, to longtime players of the game, will be notable as probably the biggest change in the way that things flow. The game itself, plays pretty well the same, and Ethereal can, probably back this up somewhat. But the fact that armor is never fully ignored does mean that armor, especially higher values of armor, can really slow things down. For example, there's a big combat. It wasn't big combat that was run on the Saturday game. 6 third circle player characters against some creatures that should not have been as difficult as they ended up being. Just took a while to get down simply because they had a moderately high armor rating, which prevents them from taking wounds, and therefore the penalties associated with wounds, and therefore being knocked down. Those sorts of things that can snowball and turn a combat around relatively quickly. The Sunday session for that same encounter, I lowered the armor rating, and that certainly made a difference. Of course, this is where spells like Earth Darts, which in 4th edition, in addition to straight doing damage, reduces the target's armor for a limited period of time. Things like that, can kind of come into play. But generally, lower armor rating is a lot more important, and that's something that is being looked at and reviewed with the Game Master's Guide, to make sure that opponents that are supposed to be more lower level don't have armor ratings that are going to result in combats taking a really long time for characters that they're equivalent of. A lot of the damage boosting and armor defeating talents don't start showing up until the journeyman circles, and that is something that definitely can affect the course of play. One of the things that was already on the radar for the Game Master's Guide, but is definitely getting another look as well, is advice on encounters, combat encounters in particular, in how to manage those so that you don't end up taking a long time in the course of a game to resolve a combat encounter. I would like to have the feeling where your regular sort of non-finale combat encounter, is something that feels like it could be resolved within the first, 3 to 5 rounds, and even if the numbers, don't necessarily, even if that, not saying that in that span of time all of the enemies will be down, but that there are tools and advice in the Game Master's Guide for managing that. A group of bandits, sentient beings, for example, going up against a group of characters, if there is strong resistance and one or two of them go down, or they start suffering, wounds fairly quickly, that sort of thing, are going to surrender or try and retreat. Not necessarily introducing a hardcore morale mechanic like you might see in some older systems, but basically a kind of threat, challenge rating kind of thing that will give a Game Master guidelines in how to handle an encounter, combat encounter with this type of enemy. I mean, something like undead or horror constructs, will be a lot more likely to fight to the death, whereas name givers outside of a desperate situation will prefer to surrender or flee or stay alive rather than have a long knockdown, drag out 15 to 20 round fight that is largely just a die rolling slog. I want to try and avoid that. I think the system does allow for people who make intelligent use of their talents and spells and other abilities to speed things up and take down enemies properly. A warrior with shield bash and waterfall slam is going to be able to knock down his opponents, giving his allies an advantage in attacking him and that sort of thing. So that's one of the goals and one of the things that I am definitely looking to make sure is part of the Game Master's Guide, not just the rules for resolving, not just all of the stats for creatures and the rules for handling falling and fire and stuff, but the setting info, obviously, as well as guidelines and advice from my almost 20 years of running the game, and other people as well who have had a lot of experience running the game and coming up with little tips and tricks and so forth. So that's going to wrap it up here for today. In the future, I think, if this is well received, that I will probably continue to do this sort of thing because I can, dash it off in, several minutes and go from there. I may address things that come up on the forums or answer specific questions. In the meantime, visit our forums at facetgames.com, or if you prefer, you can email me directly. But that'll do it for now, and have a great weekend.